Homeward Haunts. 10 terrifyingly haunted locations too close for comfort. Episode 1. Washington. Please keep in mind that the following selections are rather arbitrary. There are many more frightening locations than what I listed. These are just a few that stood out to me as wonderfully eerie. Please remember that some of these locations may be on private or restricted property, so show respect and abide by the law if you plan on visiting them. Martha Washington School for Insane Girls, Seattle. From 1900 to 1971, the building served as a boarding school for delinquent girls in Seattle, Washington. It is said that sometime in the 1940s, a man who worked as a janitor lost his mind and killed several patients and staff members before being subdued by the police. During his rampage, he's said to have dragged the bodies to a nearby dock and threw them into the murky waters below. Along with this, 3 other girls were murdered and their bodies thrown into a well on the site. Despite these controversial happenings, it was ultimately money that spelt the end for the institute, as it closed its doors in 1971 due to financial issues, and from then on sat vacant. It was during this time that it was utilized by Satan worshippers that vandalized it and sacrificed animals on the property. After countless complaints of terrifying events and strange goings-on, the city council finally had the school demolished. This, however, did nothing to stop the events. If anything, it amplified them. There are accounts of an unforeseen force grabbing people by the ankles as they walk across the nearby docks, as well as ghostly shrieks and footsteps that follow you on misty nights. Nowadays, the grounds are free to access, but you'll seldom find a local willing to venture there after sunset. Manresa Castle, Port Townsend. Originally built and owned by Charles and Kate Eisenbeis in 1892, this 30-room mansion resting in Port Townsend has exchanged ownership many times until 1968. It has been a private home, nunnery, school, and finally renovated as a hotel. In a large old building with a history such as this, it should be no surprise that there are many reported cases of hauntings. Guests who stay at the castle present day report that rooms 302, 304, and 306 are haunted. There have been cases where guests have heard footsteps sounding above them, despite there being nothing above them but the attic, which is closed off. It is generally believed that the responsible party is a ghostly monk who hung himself in the attic during the period of time in which the church owned the building. There are also claims that late at night you can hear a young woman weeping. This is thought to be the spirit of a girl whose lover had not returned from war, and in her grief she threw herself from one of the upper-story windows. Along with these 2 specters, there are reports of objects moving themselves, and even glasses exploding. Despite these unnerving events, the staff takes it rather well. The hotel even keeps a journal where guests are encouraged to share their tales. Point Defiance Park, Tacoma. Though many locations in the Point Defiance Park are claimed to be rich with unearthly presence, we will be focusing primarily on the pagoda. This large homage to Asian architecture has an intriguing past of arson and death. Twice now, the popular wedding venue has mysteriously been set ablaze. No signs or evidence of any cause could be found, leaving authorities to scratch their heads. More strange ongoings include claims of the sound of hard-soled shoes walking throughout the building after hours, when no one was supposed to be inside. These footsteps are said to ring out through the upper floor on the east side of the building and make their way halfway down the staircase before abruptly coming to a halt and then disappearing. Often, it is claimed that heavy breathing and deep, sad sighs can be heard accompanying the footfalls. Cold spots are also known to appear in various parts of the building, though most commonly noted in the storage area in the basement. Many people associate this strange activity with a tragic tale from the 1920s. A newlywed couple, having just been married in the pagoda, had made plans for the wife to catch the boat to visit her parents on nearby Vashon Island. The husband watched her board the small launch from his pocket spyglass as he observed from the upper level of the pagoda. To his horror, he witnessed the launch take on water and go down. The women in their heavy period clothing could not swim well, and he could not reach his wife in time to save her. In his grief, he returned to the building where he shot himself in the head with his pocket pistol. It is generally assumed that it is his footsteps that are heard echoing in the night. Carnation Cemetery, Carnation. Originally built in 1905, Carnation Cemetery is home to many rumors and accounts of paranormal activity. Originally owned by the Masons, this plot of land exchanged hands several times before landing in its final and current ownership. One of the well-known rumors is that many who enter claim they felt strong pains as they crossed the threshold. It is also said that if you enter after the sun has gone down, you will often hear footsteps following behind you, growing closer and closer before finally disappearing. Others claim that the entire time they spent within the cemetery, they continually saw figures moving in the corner of their eyes, and when they turned to look, there was nothing there. It is also common to feel breath on your neck and hear something whisper inaudible words in your ear. Finally, and perhaps most well known and frightening, is the apparition of a woman in white. She is said to gracefully glide through the graveyards as if looking for something. Several people have reported also seeing a young boy with her from time to time. Given the great number of reports of paranormal encounters, Carnation Cemetery is a popular destination for ghost hunters. Starvation Heights, Olalla. If you were to ask Washington residents what location had the most evil history in the state, many would likely tell you it is, without a doubt, Starvation Heights. The name in itself should give you a hint as to the site's gruesome past. From the early 1890s until 1912, Olalla, Washington native Linda Burfield Hazard, a self-proclaimed doctor, ran a clinic of sorts from the attic of her mountainside cottage. Though she had no true medical training, she considered herself studied in homeopathy and authored a book titled Fasting for the Cure of Disease. Far and wide, she advertised that her treatment plan could cure anything, from cancer to minor ailments. This miracle treatment? Patients would only receive one small bowl of soup a day and were forced on long walks for over 40 days. Although many of Hazard's patients starved to death, it's estimated between 24 to 40 in fact. It wasn't until 2 British heiresses came to her clinic that she faced any consequences. Under Hazard's care, both sisters lost more than 50% of their body weight. one barely managed to survive the ordeal, while the other sadly perished. Upon further investigation, it was found that Hazard had been attempting to embezzle money from their accounts whilst holding them prisoner. In 1913, Hazard was found guilty, and her murderous clinic finally shut down for good, and more recently, demolished. Locals in the area claim the grounds where it once stood are rich with paranormal energy, and often, should you go poking around the area, you may find yourself face to face with one of Hazard's patients. Gravity Hill, Prosser. Gravity Hill is an interesting location. It does not refer to a town or property, but to a road. Its exact location is not recorded anywhere, but locals know of it, though you'd be hard-pressed to find one willing to tell you. And if they did, it would be under the condition that you not share the knowledge with anyone else. The best I can tell you is that Gravity Hill is about 10 miles south of the town of Prosser. Those who find it will recognize it by the crudely drawn start line on the road at the base of a large hill. Apparently, you are to stop your car at the starting line and then switch it into neutral. At this point, you would then ask the present ghosts to kindly give you a push up the hill. This is where things get interesting, as if answering your polite request, your car will supposedly begin to move up the hill of its own accord. Once at the top of the hill, it will grow stationary once more. Apparently, there will be a chill in the air, but nothing to be seen. Some people who have claimed to have done this said that before beginning, they had coated their bumper with talcum powder, and upon reaching the top of the hill, they would get out of their car and notice dozens of small handprints set into the powder. Northern State Asylum, Sedro-Woolley. Built just 4 miles north of the city of Sedro-Woolley stands Northern State Mental Hospital. Built in 1909, this asylum was seen as a solution to both the overcrowding of the other institutions in the state, as well as a well-needed fix for the economic crash of 1893. Despite how common ill treatment of patients in mental institutions at the time was, Northern State was known for its reputation of admirably humane treatment. At least, this was the case until Dr. James Winfield Doughty took over, and with him he brought the highly experimental and disapproved procedure of transorbital lobotomy. Over the course of his reign, it's estimated that some 1,000 people died and were buried in unmarked graves behind the gymnasium building of the Institute. In recent years, most areas of the asylum have been closed off due to unsafe conditions, but those who venture inside, it is highly recommended to go accompanied by an employee who knows how to safely traverse these conditions. Report many strange happenings. Of these, one of the most commonly reported sightings is that of Fred, a mischievous spirit that enjoys startling visitors by tossing objects across rooms. One of the dorms is also claimed to be home to a little phantom girl and her red ball, as well as an elderly male who seems to be searching for her. Other accounts include tales of the nurses' station, in which it is frigidly cold even in the dead of summer, as well as gruesome visions of bodies hanging in the window. Thornwood Castle, Lakewood. Nestled on 4 acres at the shore of American Lake stands Thornwood Castle. This 500-year-old, 54-room Elizabethan manor was dismantled from its birthplace in England and rebuilt on the shores of American Lake in Lakewood, Washington. In a building with such an extensive history as this, it's not hard to think that there could be an extensive amount of strange activity linked with it. Some such activities include Anna's room. Anna was the wife of Chester Thorne, the master of the estate. It has been said that occasionally, when staying by yourself in the room, if you glance in the mirror, you can see a woman sitting at the bay window, gazing out to the grounds below. But when you turn to look, there's no one there. There have also been reports of the eerie feeling of being watched, footsteps up and down the hall when no one is there, lights turning themselves off and actually unscrewing themselves from their sconces, and ghostly apparitions that disappear from sight when they turn the corner. However, despite the frequent unexplained activity, it would seem that there is nothing malevolent or negative there. Something I can't say for the next location. Maltby Cemetery, Maltby. Maltby Cemetery is perhaps the most infamous in Washington state. Built in 1901, this old plot of land has a surprising number of rumors and terrifying tales about it. The most famous of these likely being the 13 Steps to Hell. As you've probably put together from the name, the story is that located somewhere in the cemetery is a set of stairs that lead to the gates of hell. It's said that these stairs are concealed within a crypt. The crypt itself cannot be entered unless you have 7 keys for the 7 locks keeping it bound. Upon entering, you either die or watch your soul enter hell before returning to you. It's rumored that many people have been lost this way. Despite the prevalence of this myth, very few have claimed to have actually found the stairs, and those who allegedly have refuse to divulge its location. Another layer to the myth is that the hill the cemetery is built upon is actually the stairs itself. That each layer of the cemetery is a step of sorts, and if you take the right path on the right night, when you reach the bottom of the hill, you'll vanish. No one knows where you're supposed to have gone. However, in order to even see the right path, you're supposed to first sell your soul. Something I would highly advise against testing for the sake of experimenting. Seattle Underground Tunnels. Anyone who's entered the Seattle tunnels could tell you why it's believed to be haunted. What about a dark, dingy, underground city doesn't scream it to the heavens? More so than the creepy atmosphere, the tragic history of the tunnels paints a vivid picture. Back in 1889, a fire started in the home of a cabinet maker. During this time, all the buildings within the city of Seattle were wooden, so the fire spread quickly. By the time the firemen got it under control, the blazing inferno had devoured 25 blocks and many lives. Realizing their mistake, when the city was rebuilt, they used stone and brick and rose the street level 1 to 2 stories to avoid flooding for good measure. This left the old city sealed below. In 1907, the tunnels were officially sealed off in attempts to keep the pneumonic plague from spreading. Though in more recent years, portions of the tunnel have been cleaned to be utilized for underground tours, the vast majority of the tunnels and Old City remain blocked off and inaccessible to the general public. However, those who venture down have reported many strange incidents. In the old stretch of road that used to be heavily occupied by prostitutes, many claim to have felt a female presence, as well as heard distant cries and feelings of pain and sadness. Another hot spot is the old bank, where unexplainable noises, apparitions, and ice-cold breezes have been encountered. There have even been cases where people have run into a young man hanging around an area that should have been unoccupied. But then, when they go to confront him about it, he's nowhere to be found. It's also said that if you go into the tunnels alone, sometimes you can spot shadow figures following you, getting closer and closer every time you stop and look back. Perhaps there's more than just old ruins that keep the city from opening the tunnels to the public. Well, folks, that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. If you're a local to the state and I didn't choose your favorite allegedly haunted location, feel free to list it in the comments below. Perhaps I'll cover it another time around. That's all until next time. Until then, stay creepy. And have a very happy Halloween.